What's up?
Hello, 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 world, and welcome back to another episode of the People's Rebuttal Podcast. And all my co-host and guys, we have a great show today. We have an amazing guest who's a very, I would say dear friend, but he's a God sent brother for me. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little excited right now, and in the building today, we have Mr. Eric Autry. Round of applause for Mr. Eric
Right,
Autry.
right.
All right. Okay. So today, guys, today's podcast is um, something that was formulated when I was talking to my dear friend on the phone one day, and it's the personal effects of COVID and the whole pandemic. And so, when we were talking and ah, man, just warmed my heart. And I just said to myself, the world needs to hear this because I can just imagine how many people had personal effects for whatever reason and however it was from the pandemic and the whole COVID thing. So, again, to welcome our wonderful guest, we have Mr. Eric Autry. Eric, if you don't mind, if you don't telling the people a little bit about yourself before we go ahead and get started.
Yes, Mafio. Thank you for the nice, warm introduction. I appreciate it. It's you're a godsend too, and I appreciate your time and all the conversations. But I will tell you that I, obviously I'm first and foremost a human being, and I have emotions and feelings and a mind like everyone else.
Yeah.
And I live here in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and I run McDonald's restaurants here in the Dallas Fort Worth area. So people is the most important ingredient in our business, and taking care of those people is very important and my number one priority. And any day in the day of McDonald's is always an interesting day. No 2 days are the same. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's and you got to love working with people and taking care of people. As a leader, my job is to serve those who serve my customers. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
first and foremost.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. So, um, again, it was just a warm conversation about how COVID affected my dear brother. And Eric, if you don't mind, if you could just tell us, what was COVID to you in the
Right.
last year and a half,
Yeah.
2 years?
Well, Mafia, as we talked before, it was about a year ago that I had COVID myself. And it was
Okay.
almost 2 years ago that this thing called the pandemic changed our world forever. And
Yes.
it first affected me as a leader for McDonald's organization. It affected me in a way that it displaced a lot of my employees when the pandemic first, the onset of it back in March of 2020. So we're talking 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it affected me that way because it displaced employees, because there was a lot of fear and
Hmm.
the unknown of, well, what are we dealing with here? What is this? Because
Hmm.
we've never had anything like this before.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, as you can imagine when the world starts to shut down as we know it, and everybody is forced to stay home, and you're quarantined, and there's a lot of fear out there. You don't know what to say to your employees, and so um, it's about the mindset as a leader, and it's
Hmm.
about making sure that you're taking care of people and you're leading them even through the darkest of days. And this
Yes.
and I think that's it's scary. It's very fearful um,
Okay.
of chartering a territory where you don't know you don't know what you're dealing with, but yet we are essential because we didn't close our restaurants.
Hmm.
And we forced everybody had to go through the drive-through. And we have a great way of obviously delivery service through Uber Eats and through DoorDash. And so
Hmm.
a lot of customers who were quarantined at home were forced to order and get it delivered at home, which was great. But we had to have employees in order to do that work in the store to serve the customer. And
Yes.
so lots of measures put in place, for protecting our employees, wearing gloves and masks and all the kind of protective equipment that we have. And
Yes.
so that was my first experience as a leader with COVID
Okay.
and how it affected my employees.
Yes.
And then a year later, after working in the environment of taking care of our customers and working with my employees, um, it was a year after the pandemic that I actually got COVID myself.
Okay. Okay.
And I had already been conditioned into my mindset that COVID was obviously very scary because we didn't know what would become of it and how it would affect us.
Hmm.
When I actually got COVID myself and I faced the reality that I was diagnosed with COVID because I got it somehow, even though I was wearing protective equipment and I was taking all the necessary precautions, I still caught it.
Yes.
And I will tell you that that was the loneliest feeling I ever had in the world.
Wow. Lonely. Okay.
Lonely
Mm.
of not being able to socialize and actually be there to take care of my employees
Mhm.
because I too had to do what millions of other people had to do, and that was to quarantine.
Yes. Yes.
And and then that in itself, that whole time was a journey in itself on a personal level of what I
Hmm.
felt like during the time that I had COVID.
Hmm.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, there's obviously,
Okay.
there's more to it than just the surface, but at a surface level, that's what it was like as a leader running
Okay.
a business and catching COVID.
Okay. All right. And Eric, I have a couple questions because I recall you saying how you were protecting yourself like everyone else.
Yeah.
You mentioned you were vaccinated, correct?
Well, at the time that I actually caught COVID, vaccinations were not required. I wasn't eligible for vaccination because I wasn't 65 or older. So,
Hmm.
Okay.
it was only available to people that were 65 and older
Mhm.
during, I guess, February of last year. And
Yes.
so it wasn't, it was one of those things where I wasn't quite ready. I was about to get the vaccination, but
Okay.
when I actually got COVID, of course, I couldn't get the vaccination.
Right. 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 Okay. And another wow. One point in your conversation you mentioned to me, and it's kind of heart piercing, the loneliness part. You mentioned
Hmm.
you were lonely. Um, please expound on lonely.
Yeah, lonely, from a leader helping your employees. And when the pandemic first started, it was, you felt alone there as a leader because you're chartering territory you've never been through before.
Mm.
You can't see the future. You have no control of it, and you're just having to lead, like you're almost blind, leading the blind to a degree. But that was my responsibility. And then when I got COVID myself, um, the lonely piece of it was that um, you had to go home and you had to stay home and you had to quarantine and you couldn't go anywhere and you wanted to go see the doctor but they didn't want to see you either and because you were positive COVID and um, you're isolated, you're
Yes.
isolated
Yeah.
from the rest of the world,
Hmm.
and the world didn't stop for anybody. It didn't
No, not
stop
at
for
all.
me.
Of
It
course.
didn't stop for anybody else.
Yes.
And
Yes.
your friends and people that well, you can't have anything to do with them either, and they don't want you to be around you because you've got COVID.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so it's very isolating. And
Mm.
I think it has it has an effect on the mind and how you think and how you perceive the world around you. I know that now after being through it.
Yes, yes. And
Hey,
so, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vaughn.
Eric, this is Vaughn. So
Yes, Vaughn.
I had a question. Uh, in the, I guess we're talking about leadership.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know how important was it? How important was it to keep a positive attitude and a positive outlook during those times of darkness? And how were you able to relay that to your employees?
I think that, great question, Vaughn. And I will tell you that there's no fear like chartering through darkness that you've never been there before. And
Right.
the biggest thing that I could do as a leader to show the way when I didn't necessarily know the way was to um, be there hands on, side by side in the trenches with them, helping them take care of the customer.
Yes.
And I was there. I was in the trenches with them saying, I'm here to help you and you're not by yourself. And
That's
none
the
of us know
best
what's
way.
going to go on. But that was what I could do as a leader.
And I think
And
that's the best way.
yeah,
I think, as being put in a position of a leader and being, it's very important that the employees see you, like you say,
yeah,
down on the ground levels with them, and you're not speaking
right,
from some top of the hill,
right,
like in my profession at the time I was teaching, and
Okay.
the people that were working downtown, they were giving us mandates from downtown that they didn't have to
hmm
go into. We were going into the classrooms not knowing the situations, and these people were
hmm
working from home.
right,
So you're not taking into account uh,
yep,
all the teachers and other staff that you have going into these schools that have children of their own, and
hmm
you putting people in in positions of uncertain dangers that you don't know, uncharted territory, as you would say. We had no idea, and I just and I think a lot of people lost respect for the leadership
hmm
and administration, because it gives off a feeling that you don't care about
right,
the people that's down there. And like you
right,
said earlier, it's about the people. It's always
hmm
about the people, no matter what job I've ever had or what career I've ever had. I
right,
always remember the people that were there and not the actual job that we were doing.
Yes.
And
right,
as long as I think people feel like they are a part of that working wheel that's there, feel like that you are a part, that you are an important aspect of how this machine works on a day-to-day basis, and
hmm
we are totally included in everything. I think we can push through those times.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Great point.
yeah.
Great
The
point.
So this
employee,
is Zach.
yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
Did, did you have to deal with any of your employees who lost family members? Did you lose family members? Was that? I mean, obviously, it was as many as much as people want to say. Well, it was only 1 or 2%. 1 or 2% to the people who actually lost somebody is a pretty big percentage.
Yeah.
Did you have to deal with that at all?
Yes, Zach. Yeah, great question. Had to deal with a lot of employees who had family members, not maybe immediate family members, but elderly grandparents to begin with that they lost to COVID, um, and and some immediate family members that got COVID, that they got it in their home, and then it spread throughout everyone in the family. And then but I didn't lose anybody personally to COVID. I had relatives who did get COVID, and of course, we share the same experience about how isolating it is.
Yeah.
But the piece about the death piece is, when you lose somebody for COVID, from the employees that I know that lost somebody, it was it changed that person's it affected their mindset in a way that basically you reevaluate life.
Yes.
I mean, you go through everything and say, oh, well, what am I doing and why am I doing it? And so COVID is a resetting mindset, I think, to the people who have it and the people who experience death.
Yes.
Well, and that's, I worked with a young lady who lost her, I had a view of COVID, from the outside. Obviously, I have no idea if I had it. If I did, it was extremely mild.
Mm-hmm.
I know one person that got it who was 80 something years old who, somewhat, he said it was one of the scariest things he'd ever been through. But then, she loses her grandmother, her grandfather, her brother, her dad. Her mom had passed away a while back. I mean, she lost almost, every older generation than her. And so every time that somebody wants to say, well, it's only 1 or 2%, I want to put her, I dare you to say that to her face, because she lost so much.
Yes. That's huge. That's huge. And Eric, I like to say, with me being a self-proclaimed social and behavioral sciences professional, the study of the mind, personality, how all that formed. I heard you mention about mindset. So, and there was a mantra that was, attached to COVID, and I really, really contested it, which was the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd like to know, like, as far as affecting you psychologically, or did you have a new normal in your life from a psychological or mindset aspect?
I think I'm still finding that new normal, Lafio.
Wow.
I think I'm still finding it. I don't think I've found it.
Okay.
I'll say this. My personal experience, and I can't be in the minds of other people, but I know how I felt and how COVID made me feel. And I will tell you, after recovering from COVID and getting back to what I thought was the new norm,
Yes.
to be back and be healthy and be negative from COVID is very liberating. It was almost like I felt set free, that
Wow.
I was held by this bondage of this thing called COVID that held my mind hostage.
Wow.
And held me in confinement. And once I overcome it, I was able to be set free from it. But I don't know that I really found the new norm. The new norm in my mind though is I do question what I do, and I do question, I question, my work ethic, and I take time from Eric. I'm a hard worker, I get it, but from my grandparents and my father. I'm a worker. I go and I get it done. I'm a leader, but I know how to do hands-on. And so it's made me think about how hard I work and how smart I work. And so, but I don't know that the new norm exists yet. I'm still looking for it.
So that's a segue into a question I wanted to ask. We talk a lot about working hard on this podcast, and what does picking up, strapping up your bootstraps and all that stuff mean? And for different.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Suck it up, Buttercup. We talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about that on this show, and my question is: so where did you start in that in that field? I guess I could say. Was it with McDonald's? Oh, well, what did you start at with McDonald's?
Yeah, I started. Great question. I started 34 years ago.
That's older than me.
34 years. I'm dating. I know I'm dating myself, and I'm aging myself.
You don't even look that old.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. So I'm almost 53. In fact, I'll be 53 next week.
Okay.
So, but no, I started when I was a kid in high school. But my work ethic started with my grandparents and with my father. I was raised on a dairy farm with cattle.
Okay.
And so I know what hard work is like.
Uh-huh.
And you didn't have to be afraid of it. You had to, that was the way you survived. I mean, everything that we ate came out of the field and the crops we made and the cattle that we raised and things. And so, but I started my career with McDonald's as a high school student, working in a local McDonald's. And I did French fries and I swept the floors and cleaned the restrooms and I picked up the parking lot and I did the things that our customers expect of us. I mean, to this day. And so that's where I learned hard work. And I was also had the opportunity I was in the United States Air Force when I was going to college, going to
Nice.
school, and I served my time in the Air Force. It was kind of family tradition that you should at least serve your country for a little period of time, and I made great friends and people that I still know to today that came out of the Air Force, and the Air Force was very structured, military, a lot like my family life was structured as a child, and
Right.
so that shaped how I led people and how I served people and how hard I worked, and so it kind of come natural in McDonald's to me because I was raised that way.
Yes. Yes.
We
And
I know
I'm
I'm
sorry. Go
just
ahead, Vaughn.
over here taking notes. I got a whole
Yeah.
page already. I know
Wow.
you guys don't know that, but I like to. So we talk a lot. Also, so my man Zach mentions. We talk about picking yourself up from your bootstraps and different jobs, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, we mentioned we said something one day. I think it was Zach maybe. Uh, is working at McDonald's still a teenage job? What type of people do you look for in workers? And do you attract? I mean, because we are in a different time, and so people have to work jobs that you probably wouldn't normally work. Is McDonald's still the ideal for a job for a teenager, or could an adult, somebody? I don't want to, because if you took a job like that, you don't want to feel like you're embarrassed working at McDonald's because I think a lot of us had this mindset. We think that, hey, it's a high school kid's job.
Right.
Well,
Well,
so the main thing with that, and yes, I did. Originally those jobs were designed, for teenagers.
Right.
And I think Vaughn's question is, how has it grown? And not that you even want to get into this subject, but the idea of minimum wage and where it goes from there. And you know, you're just another example to me, though, of somebody who worked there, went to college. I know that McDonald's does a ton of scholarships. I know that y'all are so willing to help your employees to go to college to,
Mhm.
hopefully, I know the goal there is for them to come back and manage and
Right.
own and be a part of corporate McDonald's.
Mhm.
I have never seen McDonald's as the idea of, well, I'm going to go there and I'm going to work the line my entire life. I think that's really where I came out on my side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, McDonald's is the workplace has changed a lot in my 34 years of McDonald's, and I will tell you that it is a great first job for kids, to get into McDonald's and to learn some skills and to acquire some knowledge and experience life, and also, obviously take advantage of benefits like, college tuition reimbursement and
Mhm.
and grow yourself. Well, McDonald's is also a place where people can make it a career for life. I mean, you can come into McDonald's, you can learn and grow and earn all at the same time in a work environment that you're serving customers, our guests who come to us every day, and you can learn the skills needed to grow and get into a management position, just like I did, and just like millions of other people in McDonald's have done.
Yes.
And once you get into the management position, you learn additional skills, not just for managing a shift, but you're managing a department, and then you can manage a restaurant, and then you can manage multiple locations, and grow your career that way. And so all of my, everything that I have at McDonald's is, because someone gave me the opportunity that they were given too, and they passed it on, and I took advantage of it because I had skills that I learned and I worked hard for it. And McDonald's is a great company with a lot of things that we do for the communities that we serve and for our employees. And so you can come and work at McDonald's and let it be a temporary job and go on to do other things in life, but you'll always remember what you learned at McDonald's.
Yes.
You'll always remember how you treated the customer and how special, you were made to feel in working at McDonald's. Or you can be like people that, that have acquired management skills that run our restaurants right now, that they're general managers. Or you can continue and pursue even more lifelong goals, just like, I became an approved McDonald's owner operator. And but that was hard work. It wasn't given to me. The only thing that was given to me was the opportunity for me to pursue.
Yeah.
And
that's all you
so,
asked for.
yeah,
That's
that's
all we
right.
asked for.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so,
That's it.
so McDonald's, it's a great opportunity. It's a world of opportunity, and an international company. And we have 14,500 restaurants in the United States and over 38,000 restaurants in the world now. And so, opportunity exists under the Golden Arches.
Okay.
That's all right.
So
You answered a ton of questions.
a
there.
ton of
I
questions.
I got so much stuff written down. I was like, man, he answered all my stuff. Just like that. Because
Yeah.
one of my questions was, not to cut you off, Mafia, because I heard you.
No, go ahead.
I
No,
heard
I'm
you.
fine.
Yeah, it was one of my points I had on here was, how do you guys promote leadership and entrepreneurship in there? You know what I mean? Because there is a little, entrepreneurship in there.
Mhm.
Like you said, being an owner, operator, or whatever.
Yep.
That was one of my questions I had. How do you guys promote that within? And
Yeah.
you know,
Well, there's a Vaughn, there's a structure in place that provides an opportunity for people to learn and grow from within by taking on more responsibility,
Right.
learning management and department management skills. That these are not just skills that you could just use in the McDonald's environment. These are industry like type skills that you
Right.
learn. You could go and manage anywhere. And
Right.
so I've often said that if you can manage a McDonald's restaurant, you can manage anything.
Man, that's a
Because
hard job. I think it's hard.
it is,
And
it
you
is,
know how I
it is.
learned, and not to cut you off, but you know how I learned. My son works at Sonic, and I think we have this idea that that you can't make a career out of out of these fast food places because his life is so much different from mine, and man, he moved up in management so fast over there at Sonic. I was, and he's so driven, and I watched how hard he's working and how much responsibility he's taking on, and I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of how hard he worked. But I would go up there and I would see. I have a newfound respect for people that work in these industries. Man, he was up under pressure and he was getting cussed out and stuff. I was like, oh my goodness. But
Right.
but he made it through it. So yeah, I have a newfound
Good for
respect.
him.
Yeah. But
Good for him.
it is hard work, but it is rewarding when you know that you're providing a service that someone is coming to you and paying for, and
Right.
you're delivering that consistently every day, and those customers come back. That's how you know you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
And you know what, the work is hard. If it was easy, anybody could do it, right? And
Mhm.
so
Absolutely.
it takes unique people with unique skills that have a service mindset. You have to have that in your head, that you want to serve others. And if
Yes.
you've got that, you got it. You got your ticket written right there.
There
You
it
know.
is.
So
There it is.
this is Zach. Have you ever had to have the conversation that, maybe this isn't, maybe this job isn't for you? I mean, I think we've all had that conversation. I've had that conversation with technicians. Man,
Yeah.
you're a great guy. There's nothing wrong, but I don't think this is the right field for you. It's being
Right.
a service. Have you ever had to have that?
Yeah, yes, I would say, Zach, we've had to have those type of conversations, and what I look for as we lead those conversations is ways to repurpose what people are doing. So maybe they're working and they're not good with customers because they don't like to socialize with public, right?
Mhm.
So maybe they could work in the kitchen. And a lot of times it's just finding where people fit in at
Yes.
and being able
Knowing
to
your
show them.
personnel.
Good for you.
Yeah, knowing your
Knowing
staff and
personnel.
yes. And then, and sometimes people just, they want to work with their friends. Maybe their friends work somewhere else and they want to work together, and maybe, so sometimes people make their own decisions, but what we try to do is retain high quality talent to take care of our customers. And when we know that someone's maybe not making it, we try to step in and lead and shoulder them more of us shoulder to shoulder, so that if they do leave us and they go somewhere else, at least they had a good experience and they were able to find themselves.
Mhm.
And I think that's more important, is that the person leaves feeling like they found themselves, even though it may be somewhere else.
Yes, I get it.
Sweetness.
Good job. Okay, and so Eric, I have a question, and
Okay.
as you were talking about your childhood and military, I was just, I wasn't, I was hating that Zach wasn't in studio today because your background really reminded me of his. And
Hmm.
then when you got into the hard work aspect, as we mentioned, you know,
Hmm.
suck it up, buttercup, tighten up your bootstrap aspect, you know,
Right.
this question kind of comes from Mafio, the reminder of
Hmm.
Mafio, Remind Thought Innovator, and knowing
Hmm.
how pertinent, going through situations. If you have something you can relate to, a situation you're going through and kind of struggling. In your instance, you say you haven't quite found that new normal yet.
Hmm.
I ask this question because I love to see everybody in the world win at
Hmm.
anything and just have happiness and peace in their life. So my
Hmm.
question is, and finding this new normal of yours from a psychological aspect, have
Hmm.
you ever tapped into your childhood when you had to go through some of those struggling days, gathering the food from the field, or, getting up
Hmm.
early, or whatever that hard work mentality was structured and formatted?
Hmm.
Have you correlated any of that into moving on to your new normal?
Interesting. Yeah, I do reflect.
Okay, good.
And have reflected quite often, not
Okay.
just during, COVID and
Hmm.
since the
Hmm.
world of COVID, but I've often reflected on my childhood because I believe that shapes my experiences. My
Yes.
experiences shaped my mindset for who I am
Yes.
today.
Yes.
And so, one of the things that I often reflect on is just how hard I worked as a child
Mhm.
growing up, and just how sometimes I don't think people work as hard as they used to.
Okay.
And I sometimes I struggle with that as of how do I convey hard work without it coming across as hard work?
Yes.
Like roll up your sleeves, pick up your bootstraps, and let's just make it happen.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's easier said than done. I mean,
I agree.
really. I mean, when you're
I
in the
agree.
store, when you're in the restaurant environment, in our environment, and you've got customers who want, they come there for whatever they want,
Hmm.
and you don't have enough staff, or you ran out of product, or you got staff that they're not really motivated today, something's going on. It's
Yes.
how do you I struggle sometimes with being able to convey that hard work is okay,
Yes.
because I did it.
Yes.
And we have so many more modern conveniences today when the early days of when I got into the business. And so I think that's one of my challenges, is always trying to convey what it was like when I was a kid, because sometimes that's, to kids these days, or even to staff, people don't really work. They don't really care about that.
Yes.
It's about the here and now and the immediate, what's in front of us.
Yes.
But Mafio, I do go back and I often think about, childhood and stuff of, that I'm so glad that I learned hard work, from my grandfather, my grandparents, my mom and dad, because it makes me today. I believe it makes me a better leader, because I'm not afraid to get in there and do it.
Yes.
I'm not afraid to make it happen. And I think that people need to see that in a leader.
Okay.
But
And
how far? Oh, sorry, this is Vaughn again. How how big of an impact do you feel that the technology that you guys have affects um, how hard a person works?
Well, I think our technology actually enables a person's job to be easier.
Right.
I mean, when I got into McDonald's, I mean, we were almost, well, let's see, almost taking orders by hand on paper. I mean, think about, we just got computers in the restaurant that you can actually push a button and ring something up. But now, and you had to make your change out of your head, and we didn't have a thing called credit cards.
Yes.
Everything was
Wow.
cash. And you had to okay, well, how much change do I give the customer? You had to do that all in your head.
Yes.
And today you've got a cash register that tells you how much money to give back to the customer.
Right.
So that's just one example of many. I mean, when I got in McDonald's, I mean, we sliced our own onions, and now today they come pre-sliced,
Yes.
so
Does that
little
affect
things
the
like,
taste?
no.
Hey man, I had
Onion,
a question. I had some real questions over here.
slivered onion is
I
a
had some
slivered
real
onion.
questions because we got people that's around here like, I don't go to McDonald's anymore. And I gotta ask the question, what happened to the Big Mac patties, man? I remember being a kid, that Big Mac was the Big Mac. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
now it's like, it's like a double Happy Meal burger.
Well, Vaughn, there's been other burgers that have come up. There's been other burgers like the quarter pounder and the double quarter pounder that is bigger, but the Big Mac, Vaughn, is still the Big Mac.
I know it. I love the sauce.
It's still
I'm
the
not
same
gonna
Big
lie
Mac.
I
to you.
love the sauce.
I'm not gonna
I
lie to you.
love it.
And you know what?
I
Being
love
the
it.
big guy that I am, and because I'm such a creative guy, and the pandemic forced me into my creative area.
Okay.
I've always been pretty creative and adaptive. So when I didn't like the Big Mac, I just substituted the quarter pound of meat on it.
Yes.
That's what I did. I had to have that. I had to have
That's a
that
real
upgrade.
big guy deal there.
Yeah.
That's a real big guy deal, Vaughn.
So Vaughn, you really hacked the menu, right?
You hacked it.
Absolutely. You have to make it your own. You take a little bit from, from every place. You have to have it your way. You know what I'm saying? That's what I did.
Yeah.
So I know
There
I
it
like
is.
the sauce. I didn't like the patty. I like the patties on the quarter pounder better. So I was
Right.
like, nah, man, let me put them together. That's what I want.
Hey, so-
whatever your taste is. I mean, you can hack the menu, Vaughn, and make it whatever you want it. We'll accommodate.
Yeah,
Hey,
I see that.
Vaughn, say, was that a hack or just a little bit of
I don't know
creative
what that
thinking?
was. That was called a little ingenuity to me. So
There you
that's
go.
just what I had to do. I did what I had to do, man. I know.
There you go.
I mean, I got some good taste buds. You know what I mean? I like to eat. I like food, and so you got to know what attracts you to where you're going.
Yeah,
You remember how
exactly.
stuff tastes.
Oh, yeah.
That's what makes the
Okay.
line long and the serve along with the service. But it's definitely the way your food tastes.
I totally agree. Hey,
Absolutely.
now, guys, I hate to kind of like pivot, but I'd like to know, like Vaughn, Zach, with your experience of the whole COVID pandemic and things of that nature, is there anything you guys would like to share that you personally experienced or endured during COVID, where you had a new normal, didn't accept new normal, anything you'd like to share with the listeners?
Well, COVID was personal. COVID was
Okay.
personal. It pushed us back, took us back to an era where we had to lean on what we learned as children. You know, some of that
Okay.
hard work and some of that, the simplicity of how we grew up, some of the things that we
Mhm.
had without technology.
Mhm.
And if you had kids, you know, that were teenagers at that time when COVID hit, they struggled. They struggled
Mhm.
because every time, ever since they've been here, you know, they've had technology in front of them, and so
Mhm.
with them, my kids being out of school, and you know, me at the time I was in education, um,
Mhm.
it was a rough time for them, and so
Mhm.
it forced us into a me personally into a more creative stage with my kids, and it's very kind of similar to what Eric was saying. As the leader of my house, my attitude was important. It was
Mhm.
important
Mhm.
how how I portrayed that around my kids.
Yes.
My attitude and my outlook on life had to remain positive, and I had to find ways to, keep us together while we were
Yes.
stuck in this house,
Mhm.
and that was
Yeah.
Mhm.
very challenging on a day-to-day basis because of
Mhm.
my kids weren't able to see their friends, and the coping mechanisms were different, and they went through quite a bit of I guess you could
Mhm.
say depression, and
Mhm.
but it forced me into a more um, creative position, and
Mhm.
it made me reevaluate some things in my life
Mhm.
and focus
Mhm.
more on what's important. And I think anytime you in the middle of a storm or what that doomsday thing, you have to focus on the things that are important, and
Mhm.
gravitate to those things uh, that are essential.
Mhm. Yes, I agree. I agree. Hey, Zach, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Anything you'd like to
Uh,
share as far as your? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I remember, I mean, I guess my first, true taste of the pandemic, I was actually at DFW Airport doing a work for, rewiring some TVs for a sushi place inside of, I think it was Terminal D, the international terminal.
Okay.
And it was actually the day that the airport shut down. And the
Uh-huh.
manager for the restaurant came in and said, "Look, I got two choices. I can furlough you, or I can fire you. If I fire you, you get unemployment. If I furlough you, you won't get unemployment." And of course, everybody said, and I'm sitting here going, what in the world?
Yeah.
What, huh?
Yeah.
And so, for me, it was a little bit different. Some clientele shrunk, and as you know, I picked up a massive contract, paying a ridiculous amount of money um, to do work that other people didn't want to do. And
Mhm.
I always understood the concern of COVID, and I got it, but
Mhm.
I saw a lot of people who were like, "Well, why would I do that? I make more money on unemployment.
Right.
Why would I do that? I get, you know, I can get all these things and not have to go into an office." And I
Mhm.
think we were talking about this on the podcast the other day. They were trying to hire somebody and they were paying, $50,000. Couldn't find anybody. Okay, $60,000, 55, and then 60, and then they finally found somebody when they hit 65,000. And it's like, well, but I
Mhm.
want to work from home half the time. Well, this is IT. This is hands
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
You can't work from
Yeah.
home. So, don't get me wrong, it benefited me massively because as a contractor, I'm getting paid massive contract money that, you
Mhm.
know, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
did meet her. She worked there. The girl I said that lost all, the majority of her older family, parents,
Mhm.
grandparents.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, I talked to a guy who worked for a mortgage company who said, we have an office that's completely empty that's supposed to house 2,000 people, and we can barely get 100 and something people,
Mhm.
to come into work. And I said this last pod, there was a massive opportunity to get FaceTime with CEOs, COOs, owners of companies just by taking a job and going into the office. And the one guy told me, I said, what would happen if that, he said, well, when people started coming back, odds are that person, although they've only been there for, 6 months, would probably be their boss because of the amount of face time that they would have, the promotions they would get for, putting forth that effort. And they were doing all the spacing, desks were 6 feet apart, sanitation, mask requirements, everything to protect their employees, but they could still, they still couldn't get people to actually go in and do the work.
Yeah. And
So,
Zach,
COVID.
Yeah.
But no, go ahead, please.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. It is even still now, it is very challenging to find workers that want to work in the McDonald's. I mean, it's very challenging for the staffing piece because there's been so many challenging challenges with that. Not just to say the marketplace by which everyone is looking for staff. But, when you're competing with people to get unemployment and you're competing with things that come free, it changes the whole landscape for how we try to staff our restaurants. And so we're trying to make sure that we're taking care of and listening to our employees and making sure that their experience in the workplace, they feel safe, they feel respected, and they feel comfortable in a workplace serving our guest. And so, and by the way, they get benefits and they get good competitive pay. But yeah, that's
I think we lost Mafia there.
Yeah, it looks like we lost Mafia.
Lost Mafia there. That's
Yeah.
some little pandemic thing.
yeah.
We lost a little pandemic thing. Let's see. I had a.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard nowadays to find, and I deal with employers all the time talking about, we can't beat, unemployment plus this. We can't beat all the free stuff that people get just for not working. They had a few people that interviewed that were, they were literally, sign here on this piece of paper showing that I showed up here. And it's like, well, we're making you an offer. Your offer's $55,000, and you know nothing. They're literally looking to put bodies in seats. Nothing. We'll give you $55,000 a year, and they're like, I'll think about it. And then of course it ends up being a no because, why work? And I know that obviously in your industry, it's not really an option to work from home. I mean, you're either going to be there or you're not going to be there. But there's so many people that are trying to, move into that when that's not the world. That's not the world we live in.
Yeah. And I believe that, it changed. What changed, COVID changed that because, like I said before, it affects the way you think about what you're doing. And do you really want to be an essential employee and go and be right in front of the customer in the unknown environment? Is it safe? There's a lot of questions that employees have. And so that's it goes back to the mind and how a person thinks about what they're doing. And that's where we're currently at, trying to work our way through. And I know from a personal perspective, I'm trying to find the new norm. I'm still looking for it, So
Yes.
You kind of touched on it earlier. How that new norm, how big of a piece is mobile delivery a part of that now?
Oh, it's huge. It's a huge part of our business because again, COVID accelerated. I mean, customers were already looking for ways to eat McDonald's away from the store and eat it at home. And we launched a delivery service, back in 2017. And so we had it several years prior to COVID. And so, but what happened was COVID accelerated the eat at home business because everybody was quarantined. So it is a huge part of our business now, delivery. And of course, mobile order pay, you can mobile order pay from your phone and, order it right now where you're at and run down to your local McDonald's and pick it up. And, order it and pay for it without ever interacting with an employee at the store, because that's the convenience of contactless pickup.
Yes.
Oh, so what, you got to go in and get it?
Well, you can just go through drive-through, or you can go curbside and we'll bring it out.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yep. Well,
Wow.
kind of like Sonic, they bring it out to you,
There you go.
Yeah, I like personal service. Yeah,
Yeah.
put somebody else on skates.
All right.
Yeah, whatever happened to the skates, man? We need to bring
The
that back.
skates.
That was always fun to watch.
All right. And
At McDonald's, we don't need skates. We're fast enough.
all right.
I know that's
all
right.
But I want
know
to see them
that's-
out there doing the twirling and everything. It's like
so
it's like
guys-
entertainment to go along with it.
Entertainment. There you go. All right. And guys, I don't mean to press. I know we have a little bit of time left, but Eric, I just like to, kind of open up the floor. We've been grilling you with questions and all that kind of stuff. You have any questions for us as co-host?
Well, I appreciate it, Mafio. Thanks a lot. I'm glad that I had a chance to share some perspective. I guess my thing is for you guys is, we've all been on this journey together with COVID in our own unique ways. And I'm always interested to know, especially having COVID myself and recovering from it and how it affected the way I think. But what is your new normal? What is your guys' normal now versus, have you found it? Because if you found it, I want to know.
All right.
I mean,
and if I may, go ahead.
No,
Zach.
go ahead,
Zach.
Mafia. No, go ahead, Mafia.
Yeah. So for me, being a, philosopher, social behavioral sciences professional, my business of Mafia the Reminder, Remind Thought Innovator, I never really bought into the new normal because I'm all about controlling my mind, because if I can control my mind, I can control my world and any environment I go in. So when I heard all these, new normal and the death tolls and all this, you can't do that, can't do that. I remember laying in a bed with my wife saying, I will not accept a new normal. I will go with business as usual and make the necessary adjustments or repositioning in my life. And so I was an essential worker at the time. So I was going out into people's homes, actually, during the whole year and a half, it was there. And I just found different ways or different things to do to kind of liberate my mind and say, I will not accept this bottling up, because my mom stopped the way she raised me. I had this stigma with being confined mentally. And so I had always had a desire to golf, and I found out that golf was considered an essential activity. So I started to golf more, and I'm now addicted.
I didn't know that.
Yes, that's when I started playing golf, because it was just a repositioning of my life to go along with whatever they say it was. I really stopped watching the news because I felt it was more infuriating than informational. And so I hated to see people like just shut themselves down and contain themselves and change everything about themselves and wipe out any and everything that they possibly learn about biology in school, science in school. I started to research more, and I found out how, in a genealogy of viruses, a virus cannot travel 6 feet in the air. It's just not a part of the genealogy of viruses. I learned that. And I also found in some research, some information about Dr. Fauci, not in a spiteful or negative way, but how he and his company or corporation or entity created AIDS, HIV in a lab, and at the same time created a cure. And knowing where I came from, I saw all all these different people attracting the AIDS, HIV, but there was never a cure. So it discredited, or I couldn't buy into all this stuff that was going on. So for me, I never accepted the new normal. I controlled my mind. So my person, places, situations, and things around me didn't influence me to where I had to reshape or reform the essence of who I was.
Interesting. Good.
Yeah. I don't know. I really, I haven't changed a ton. I think I take other people and, I remember when masks weren't a deal, but if I would walk into a store and I saw a bunch of people with masks, I put a mask on.
Respect.
I will respect other people's decision. I was in LA, they took it to a whole nother level. I mean, they're taking it to a whole nother level out there, which even now they're starting to pull back those restrictions. I do a little bit of sports marketing. I have many clients who are fed up with COVID for obvious reasons. They're used to going to golf tournaments and, being extremely social, and they were locked down and, well, you can't have a golf tournament. You can't do this. We had quite a few of them get canceled. And then, of course, last year when some of that started lifting, it was like everybody wanted to go to these golf tournaments. For me, we've pretty much found out that, everybody's, I don't know if it's, the mantra was, together, that was truly the mantra. It's just everybody was like, well, this is going to be the new normal. And if it is, then, we have to be respectful. Again, if I walk into a place and, 90% of the people are wearing masks, I'm going to toss a mask on. It's easier. I'm not going to have the complaint. You have these idiots in stores, breaking into, you just had the governor of Florida telling a kid to take off his mask to whatever. I mean, somebody needs to slap the, and I like some of his policies. I mean, it's when you get, Peter told me that I'd have slapped him. Boy, talk to you. I mean, he's got a whole set of craziness going on as well. There's a lot of hypocrisy. This is so bad, you shouldn't do this. Yet half of Congress goes to Florida to vacation so they don't have to wear a mask. I think we have to be respectful of other people's,
of course,
how they feel. And they have to be respectful of how other people feel. I know a guy that he wears 3 masks. I'm like, dude, what's up with the 3 masks and gloves, and takes his shoes off before he enters the house. I'm like, I think you're taking it to a whole nother level, man. You might want to. That's it. But my new normal really hasn't changed.
That mask.
Yeah, I'll be respectful, but we have to start getting to a place where we're also being sensible, especially since we do have vaccines. And the survival rate with vaccines is ridiculous.
All right. Couple minutes, big fella, Vaughn.
Mine wasn't too elaborate. I started working from home a hell of a lot more. That's what that was. But you know what? I never stopped. I learned that I think that virus preyed on people that were more stagnant. I never stopped moving, man. I walked outside every day. Me and my buddy did. We walked every day. Every day we hit that track and kept our minds going. Just that activity and that blood flow helped us out a lot. But one thing I could say, my life transitioned to being at home more. As you know, I went through a bunch of stuff, so now I'm at home now. So and I'm happy. I'm happy. And my kids are good. We pushed through, and my son was an essential worker, and I didn't know how to really feel about that. Because he was coming home every day, and I was sitting. I wasn't around people, but for him to come out, I mean, I think just just always having the personality not to be a panicker. I'm not a panic person.
Yeah.
I'm more of a
Yes.
a troubleshooting person, a solution
Okay.
based
Mhm.
person. So I
Yes.
try to find solutions for things and things that work for us. I say, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. This
Mhm.
all the other theories and shit. You gotta throw that out the door. We gotta live. At
Yep.
the end of the day, we gotta live because
At the end of the day.
sitting in this house was killing people.
Right.
Yeah.
Around the nation. So, like you say, like we said earlier, I think it was real important to keep a positive attitude around here
Mhm.
and just make the adjustment, man, and push through it. And that's what I did. So.
Mhm.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, we're kind of at our limit. Eric, anything else you want to throw out there? Guys, you want to close with anything today?
Can I ask one
You
more
go ahead.
thing? I was listening to the radio. I think it may have been a McDonald's commercial, but it probably applies to you guys too. The new the Beyond Meat and all, the vegetarian movement. The commercial goes into those, and then how it talks about the little bitty things at the end, like it's cooked on the same grill with the meat. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? They say, yeah, we have all plant-based stuff, and then yeah, it's cooked on the same grill with the eggs and the meat. So, how do you feel about that?
Well, how do I feel about it? Well, I mean, it is a plant-based patty. It is cooked on the same grill with the meat. It's not 100% vegetarian, but it is because it is cooked on the same grill. But it's an alternative for customers that are looking for plant-based options.
Yes.
And
Close enough.
so it's you got to be able to offer things to consumers with a changing taste, and
Yes.
variety.
Yes, good deal.
Well, I hope yours is better than Burger King because that sucker made me sick.
It's terrible. You hear me?
It was
All right.
You hear
horrible.
me? That's why they
Alright.
cooking it on the grill with the bacon, so you can have just a
Horrible.
little bit of that flavor.
All right, guys. Well, again, man, another podcast. I just want to again thank you, Eric, my brother, for
Yes,
just
sir.
joining us, man. I think it was a great podcast, very insightful. I hope someone took something away from this podcast. Also, for all of our listeners, Vaughn, go ahead and hit them with the follow us, join us, share us,
Yeah.
like us.
Follow us on all different platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. What else? We're not on Spotify yet, but we'll be there one day.
At the People's
Like and
Rebuttal.
subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the bell
Yes.
for your notifications, so you'll get stay in front of all the new content.
There it is. And also, we don't just share information. We like to have our listeners included and be a part of our podcast. So if any of you guys have any or even topics that you would like for us to talk about, please feel free to send a message and we look forward to interacting with you soon. With that being said, have an amazing rest of your week and People's Rebuttal signs off.